Mr. Timer, today's speech is 7 to 9 minutes. Storytelling, of course, is a very unique art. It's able to entertain us, teach us, touch our heart, and our soul. Some of the projects that Cheryl has worked on through this particular manual. Storytellers of the ages also served in part as our historians. One of the great challenges for a storyteller is to honor our history and to do so with integrity and with vitality. So the aim of this particular project, project number 5 in the Storytelling Advanced Manual, is aptly titled, Bringing History to Life. Our next speaker, Cheryl Ketchens, will be joining this great tradition of storytellers and take us back to a moment in time that changed the course of history. Her story is entitled, A King is Born, a Boy Destined to Make History. Please welcome rising star Cheryl Ketchens.
Let me begin with a question. Can you guys imagine a world where blacks and whites were kept separate, where little black children were not able to swim in the same pools as the little white children? They were not able to attend the same schools as little white children. People were not allowed to vote as their rights should have been. They had to stand on buses. When a white passenger got on that bus, they were not allowed to continue to sit there. They had to give up that seat, and they had to stand. Can you imagine this world? It was real, and it was right here in the United States of America. But one day, a king was born. A boy by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. He was destined to change the world and make history in the making. He was the son of Martin Luther King Sr., the minister of Ebenezer Baptist Church. King learned at a very young age the power of words from his father's teaching in the church. His father had taught him very well. He taught him to stand up for what was right and to speak out for things that were wrong, and that everybody was entitled to equal justice under the law. Little Martin, as he was affectionately called, ML, took these words to heart. He never forgot those words. But there was a pivotal moment in his life when he was playing with his best friend, his 6-year-old best friend, and he was 6 at the time as well. And his friend informed him, I'm no longer going to be able to play with you. So little Martin, tears running down his face, he ran home. He runs into the house, screams at his mom, why can't I play with my friend anymore? His mother quietly beckons him over and holds on to him, and she said, ML, you can no longer play with your friend because you are black and he is white. And there are laws that prohibit the two of you from playing together. And he says, why? Am I not good enough? And his mother declared, no, that's not the case at all. You are good. You are just as good as anybody else. And the world is wrong. So little Martin dried his eyes, dried his tears away, and he looked at his mother and he says, one day, I am going to change the laws and there will be no more segregation and people will be able to be as one. So he says this at 6 years old. So this is not your typical little boy. Martin enters high school, he skips 2 grades. He graduated and entered college at the age of 15 and received his bachelor's degree at the age of 19. After his completion of his doctoral degree in 1955 and meeting Cheryl King and receiving his doctorate, he decides to go back to his roots in Alabama. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia, but Alabama is where some of his roots were. So he decides to go back there because there's a need for his ministry there. There's a need for some activism to change these laws that he had said at 6 years old he was going to change. So he goes back there with the specific purpose of changing laws and having civil rights for everyone under the law. So in 1955, King accepts his leadership role of the first great Negro nonviolent demonstrator of contemporary times. That's when he began his struggle for civil rights. In 1955, King leads the Montgomery bus boycott campaign. And during that campaign period, he was arrested, his home was bombed, and he was subjected to personal abuse. The boycott lasted from December 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks, an African-American woman on the bus, refused to give up her seat. And so it did, and she was arrested in the process for refusing to surrender her seat. This went on until, the boycott went on of the bus until December 26, 1956. So this is an entire year that blacks were not riding the bus. They walked to their jobs, they even rode mules, but they refused to ride the bus, where they were not allowed to sit where they wanted to sit. So the Montgomery bus boycott reverberated well beyond the desegregation of public buses. It was pivotal in the national movement for civil rights, and it stimulated activism in the South. And it gave Martin Luther King national attention. In 1956, December, a federal ruling, Browder versus Gale, took effect and led a United States Supreme Court decision that Alabama and Montgomery laws requiring segregated buses to be unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. In 1957, Martin was elected president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization that was formed to provide leadership for new and burgeoning civil rights movement. From the period between 1957 to 1968, King led a massive protest in Birmingham, Alabama, that caught the attention of the entire world, providing what he called a coalition of consciousness, inspiring his letter from a Birmingham jail, a manifesto of the Negro Revolution. So between that same period, he planned in the jailhouse the drives on Alabama for the registration to vote, and in 1963, the march on Washington, D.C. So let's begin with that march on 1963. 250 demonstrators followed Dr. Martin Luther King in a quiet and peaceful march to D.C., where he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and delivered his speech that's now famous, "I Have a Dream." And he became noted as one of the greatest orators of our time. In October 14th of 1964, at the age of 35 years old, Martin Luther King received the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolence. In March of 1965, he leads the Selma and Montgomery, Alabama marches to the Capitol on Montgomery. And the marches were part of the Selma voting rights campaign that he was leading that led to the passage of the voting right, which was a landmark achievement of the 1960s American Civil Rights Movement. What was to happen to this boy who had led all these movements? He did them all in a fashionable and nonviolent manner. He followed, actually, Gandhi, his teachings of nonviolence, that you could get more done without using your fists, using weaponry, just with your voice. Again, this is something he had learned at an early age from his father. Martin received one of the highest honors from the President of the United States, posthumous of his death, the gold medal, the Presidential Gold Medal. So he continues to be remembered today and will always be remembered. His birthday is actually tomorrow, the 15th. Martin, the boy who was born a king, was destined to lead a movement that would change civil rights as we know it and provide equal opportunity for all under the law. But Martin, the story closes with December 1968, when he was killed. He was putting together his final and complete march for rights for the garbage workers. And he was standing on a balcony of his Memphis, Tennessee hotel when a shot was fired that took his life. But Martin Luther King Jr., the boy who was destined to become a king and to lead a civil rights movement that would change the world, his legacy will live on.